What is going on, everybody? Hope everybody's enjoying their day so far. We are back with some more fantasy football content. Today, we're going to be giving you the Week 9 fantasy football waiver wire ads on players you need to be looking at rostering heading into the new week of this NFL season. So, today, we're going to be giving you one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, and two tight ends. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our this week's waiver wire ads. Starting with our quarterback is Sam Darnold of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Seattle is coming off of the bye week. The last time that we saw this Seahawks team was against the Houston Texans, and Sam Darnold honestly did not have that great of an outing against the Houston Texans, but we have seen the Texans defense really be stout, really against opposing fantasy football quarterbacks. So I expect Sam Darnold to get back on track, especially looking at this week's matchup against the Washington Commanders. The Commanders defense continues to have a struggle. They just gave up 3 passing touchdowns to Patrick Mahomes. So looking at this overall makeup of the Seahawks offense, it's led by JSN, their leading their pass catcher. And then in the backfield, it's a split backfield so far. It's been that way pretty much this whole entire season with both Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. But looking at Week 9 projected total points for Darnold, 19.5. Like I mentioned against the matchup, it definitely eases up because, like I mentioned, last time that we saw the Seahawks was against a tough Houston Texans defense. So the Commanders have definitely given up a ton of points to fantasy quarterbacks, but he's only rostered in 21% of leagues. So if you're looking to just stream a quarterback and going back to the matchup, especially if Jaden Daniels is out once again this week, this could be a game once again that could get away from the Commanders. So just keep that in mind. But he's only rostered in 21% of leagues. So like I mentioned, if you are dealing with either a quarterback on the bye or if you have a starting quarterback that's dealing with an injury, Sam Darnold definitely the top streaming candidate this week heading into week number 9. So that is our quarterback option. Now let's go on to the top RB options of the week. And Tyrone Tracy is definitely going to be the most popular ad, especially with the Cam Scatterboo injury. Scatterboo now done for the season, so Tyrone Tracy will now be the lead running back for the Giants moving forward in the rest of the season. So week 8 stats, when he got into the game after Scatterboo went down, 10 attempts, 39 yards, and even 2 receptions for 14 yards. So Tyrone Tracy is definitely viable to get those added points in the receiving yardage, especially if you play in half PPR or even full PPR format. So week 8, even in the loss against the Philadelphia Eagles, he did finish with 7.3 points in PPR formats. Looking at week 9, he does have a matchup against the San Francisco 49ers, and the 49ers has definitely been a defense that has definitely been gettable against fantasy running backs this season. He is projected 14.7, so Tyrone Tracy is definitely going to assume that bell cow role. There's really no other competition in this backfield so far, unless the Giants go out and maybe sign a player or trade for a running back, which I don't really expect that to happen. So Tyrone Tracy, we saw him last season. He was a top 25 fantasy running back when he was the bell cow. So he's definitely capable of this. So Tyrone Tracy, if you do need a running back, like I mentioned with the bye weeks, fluctuating every single week, and with as many injuries that are piling up, both really to every position. You have quarterback injuries, you have running back injuries, and even wide receiver injuries. But it is a nice matchup against the San Francisco 49ers at home. So Tyrone Tracy definitely going to get a bulk of the workload against the 49ers on Sunday. He is rostered in 42% of leagues, so not as available as some of these other players that we're going to be talking about. But if he's available on your waiver wire, whether you have to spend fab on him or to make a claim overnight, definitely do that because he's going to be the most popular ad this week, especially for fantasy managers who are looking for a running back desperately, like I mentioned, whether that's a bye, injuries, or they're just weak at that position so far this season. Now let's move on to the next running back, and that's going to be Bam Knight of the Arizona Cardinals. So talking about injuries, the Cardinals have had their fair share of injuries at the running back position. You already saw James Conner out for the season, and then Trey Benson probably won't be back until later on this season. So it's been the Bam Knight show for the past couple of weeks. So Arizona, like Seattle, was on the bye week, and this is a very good matchup. This is definitely matchup based. So if you need a running back, whether you miss on Tyrone Tracy, Bam Knight would be a solid option because they play a Dallas Cowboys defense that's been giving out a ton of points. You just saw what J.K. Dobbins did, even R.J. Harvey. R.J. Harvey had himself a breakout game, had 2 touchdowns against the Cowboys. And J.K. Dobbins, I know that he almost had a touchdown in that game, over 100 yards rushing in that game. So if Arizona, we'll see if Kyler Murray is back for this team. That would definitely be an added boost for this offense moving forward, especially in Monday night's matchup against the Cowboys. And keep that in mind. This is a Monday night matchup. But Bam Knight, this is a A-plus matchup going against the Dallas Cowboys on the road. And he's only rostered 19% of leagues. So like I mentioned, if you are desperate at the running back position, just looking to really slide in somebody in week number 9, this is a prime matchup for the Arizona Cardinals and Bam Knight, so go pick up Bam Knight. Other running backs I'm going to continue to mention is Tyjae Spears. It's looking like he is starting to take over this backfield. It is not that great of an offense, but if you do need a running back, along with Bam Knight and Tyrone Tracy, Tyjae Spears would be the running back, like I mentioned over the last couple of weeks as well. Now let's move on to the wide receivers, and Troy Franklin, along with Tyrone Tracy, is going to be the most popular wide receiver ad this week because he had a blow-up game, and really what was a blowout against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday afternoon. But 6 receptions, 89 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and he is clearly the wide receiver 2 on this offense. I still think that Courtland Sutton is still the alpha wide receiver 1 on this offense. I know that Sutton was close to having a touchdown in that game, but Troy Franklin continues to shine in what continues to be a developing offense, because you saw the start of the season, Bo Nix didn't really have that great of a fantasy games. For the past 2 weeks, Bo Nix has implemented himself as being a top 10 fantasy quarterback the rest of season. We'll get into the matchup here, but week 8 fantasy points, 26.9 points. Like I mentioned, explosion against the Dallas Cowboys defense, but it feels like every wide receiver has really had a good game against that defense. Like I mentioned about the matchup, you go from the Dallas Cowboys secondary that isn't great now to the Houston Texans, like we mentioned at the top, with Sam Darnold struggling. Houston has really been strong against defending the quarterbacks. So this is a but I definitely think Franklin has the volume enough to even start in this matchup. Same with Courtland Sutton in this matchup too. But week 9 projected total points at 10.6. Like Tyrone Tracy that we saw, he is rostered in 43% of leagues. So a lot of people already have him on your roster. But if he's available, definitely a viable candidate, not only for week number 9, but rest of the season and potentially the playoffs if you were to make it. Now let's move on to our next wide receivers. Is going to be Josh Downs of the Indianapolis Colts. I believe we talked about him a couple of weeks ago. Just looking at this Indianapolis Colts offense that continues to shine. Obviously, the vocal point has been Jonathan Taylor, who has become really the RB1 of this fantasy season. But looking at the wide receivers, it's going to be Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce even has gotten a role in this offense. We know what Tyler Warren, one of the best tight ends in all of fantasy football this season. But Josh Downs now, back-to-back weeks with a touchdown. I know the volume isn't all that elite as you've seen with other wide receivers on this list, but 3 receptions, 39 yards, and a touchdown. If you can get 12.9 fantasy points every single week in PPR formats, you would take that every single day. Matchup is really nice going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers defense has definitely been one of the more defensive units of this season. They've been just getting a ton of points, a ton of passing yards to opposing quarterbacks, to opposing wide receivers. So week 9 projected total points at 11.1. Would not be shocked at all if Josh Downs continues the streak of finding the end zone. And he is rostered in 53% of leagues, so he is really widely not available in most of your leagues. But if you're lucky enough to get Josh Downs, definitely go get him. Another wide receiver, Kayshon Boutte, now back-to-back touchdowns for him, and he's really just starting to be the favorite target for Drake May. You saw Stephon Diggs get a touchdown, but we mentioned Boutte pretty much every single week, and I'm going to continue to mention him because he would definitely be a viable candidate for your fantasy football team if you need a wide receiver too, or even another flex option. Kayshon Boutte, along with Josh Downs and Troy Franklin, will work in your lineups and moving forward. Now let's close it out with our tight ends. The first one's going to be Colston Loveland of the Chicago Bears. Now, I know it hasn't been too pretty of a rookie season for Colston Loveland and this Bears offense. Now, week 8, we thought that it was going to be a good matchup for the Bears. Tended to not be, but only 3 receptions, 38 yards. Week 8 fantasy points at 6.8. Now, we look at the matchup this week, going up against the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals defense has been absolutely atrocious. They absolutely blew it against the New York Jets, losing that game 39-38. You saw Breece Hall have himself a hell of a game. Justin Fields was able to bounce back somewhat in this game. But it is a really good matchup. I think that Colston Loveland pickup would just be matchup based. I don't really love his role so far this season, especially with Cole Kmet when Kmet is on the field. So this is a matchup based. So if you are in need of a tight end, definitely go scoop up Colston Loveland this week and maybe stash him, later in the season just to see what he does. But he's only rostered in 24% of leagues. So if you're just looking for a streaming option, Colston Loveland would definitely be the top tight end target this week. Now let's move on to the next tight end. Speaking of that matchup, we're going to go to Noah Fant of the Cincinnati Bengals. And Noah Fant has really taken over as the tight end one of this offense. Joe Flacco has been looking to him early and often. 3 receptions, 41 yards, 7.1. I know in the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he really had an outstanding game, got over 14 fantasy points. This past week against the New York Jets, it was still a solid game. I mean, if you can get 7+ points from your tight end every single week, you would take that. Like I mentioned, the matchup is nice going up against the Chicago Bears. I expect this honestly to be a high-scoring shootout. Both offenses are very talented. So even in the quarterbacks too, Caleb Williams and Joe Flacco could have a couple of passing touchdowns themselves. We'll see if Noah Fant can find the end zone. But this is definitely a loaded Cincinnati Bengals offense. Chase Brown is starting to take over as the RB. He really had a phenomenal game this past week against the Jets. Then your wide receivers, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But Noah Fant has definitely gotten some volume in this offense to be considerable. Fantasy start this week against the Chicago Bears. And out of all of our players, he's only rostered in 5% of leagues. So like I mentioned, if you are looking for a tight end this week or even the next couple of weeks, because this Bengals offense is really starting to play well. I know that they ended up losing the game against the Jets, but that was not at the fault of the Bengals offense, as Joe Flacco is really starting to feel himself in this offense. Other tight ends, obviously, that we're going to continue to bring up: Harold Fannin of the Cleveland Browns, Mason Taylor of the New York Jets. And then, Oronde Gadsden of the Los Angeles Chargers might end up being a league winner because he balled out on Thursday night against the Minnesota Vikings, putting up 18 PPR fantasy points. So if you picked up Gadsden last week, he was in this waiver wire video. Hopefully you won your matchup this week. But that's going to be it for our Week 9 fantasy football waiver wire ads. Let me know which player you're looking to pick up this week. And let me know which player that I missed on this list. Definitely want to know your feedback as well. But I appreciate everybody for tuning into today's video. Make sure to tune in on Tuesday night to our annual and weekly fantasy football live show, as we will be going through our starts and sits and answering your questions as well. So definitely be tuned to that. So I appreciate everybody for tuning into today's video, and I'll catch you all next time. So long for now.